Napoleon Bonaparte, emperor, military genius, and father to a doomed son. But what actually happened to the man known as Napoleon II? Napoleon Bonaparte was arguably one of the most important figures in the history of Western civilization. The military and political genius who transformed Europe in the late 18th and early 19th centuries first found prominence during the French Revolution. He later played a decisive role in abolishing the French monarchy. Having risen to power as a leader in the French military, Napoleon eventually established the French Empire, becoming Emperor Napoleon I in 1804. Throughout history, supreme leaders have found themselves preoccupied with the consolidation of their power through the foundation of a dynasty. Having conquered pretty much all that lay before him, the childless Napoleon now turned to the issue of his successor, and he was quite willing to upturn his personal life to ensure it happened. But the life of his son, Napoleon Francois-Joseph Charles Bonaparte, was ultimately as troubled as it was short. In fact, the child was separated from his father while still an infant, and died at the age of just 21, before he had a chance to prove to the world that he could carry on his father's legacy. Napoleon Bonaparte's first wife was Josephine, the daughter of a wealthy Caribbean plantation-owning family that fell on hard times after hurricanes destroyed many of their lands. She had already been married and had 2 children before she began a passionate relationship with Bonaparte in 1795. He became her second husband a year later. Despite rumors that Josephine had committed adultery, she became empress upon Bonaparte's consecration in 1804. Bonaparte had affairs of his own and even had children with his mistresses. However, he required a legitimate child to continue to establish a dynasty, and with Josephine apparently unable to conceive, he eventually divorced her. He took Marie-Louise d'Autriche as his second wife, whose father was Emperor Francis I of Austria, and whose great aunt had been Marie Antoinette.
Let them eat cake.
The young Bonaparte was born in Paris on March 20, 1811. As a symbol of the family's enormous power, the child was given the title of King of Rome, a diminutive of his father's title of King of Italy, much of which he had conquered in 1799. It may appear that at this juncture, Emperor Napoleon had it all. But while the emperor may have believed that he had finally secured his dynasty, things elsewhere were starting to fall apart. The year after the birth, France attempted a disastrous invasion of Russia, which led to the War of the Sixth Coalition. By the end of the war, an alliance of European powers had crushed Napoleon and forced him into exile. He abdicated in 1814, and though the fallen emperor attempted to secure the succession for his son, his enemies refused. With Bonaparte's empire in disarray, Marie-Louise fled France to her home country of Austria, taking her young son with her. There, the young Bonaparte became known by the German name Franz and found a new home in the court of the Austrian Emperor Francis I. Upon the defeat of Emperor Napoleon, there had been calls for his son to remain in France as a symbolic leader of the resistance. While Marie-Louise rejected this idea, the child remained something of a threat in the eyes of many of Napoleon's foes, who wondered if he might return to claim the throne that he was denied. While Napoleon's supporters referred to him as Napoleon II, his connection to his father became more distant during his years in the Austrian court. There, he was eventually given the title of Duke of Reichstadt. The young Bonaparte was just 3 years old the final time he said goodbye to his father, who after a brief resurgence known as the 100 Days was eventually defeated at the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon was subsequently forced into permanent exile on the island of St. Helena. Franz was effectively sheltered from having political agency. His biographer, Edward von Wertheimer, claims that the specter of his father's legacy began to grow within him as he advanced toward adulthood. Specifically, he developed a burning desire to follow in his father's footsteps and join the military, displaying a love of uniforms and military drills. He soon became a sergeant in the Austrian army, but the young Bonaparte didn't get the chance to take on the world. On July 22, 1832, the Duke died of tuberculosis at the age of 21. It is said that Bonaparte himself realized how little chance he had of making a mark on the world. He reportedly observed on his deathbed, "My birth and my death, that is my story." Still, the untimely death of Napoleon II didn't signal the end for the Bonaparte dynasty, as the first emperor's nephew, Napoleon III, ruled as the Emperor of France from 1852 to 1870.